You're going to want to get Carnage at Big Bad Toy Store today before it sells out, because I have a feeling it's going to. Check it out at the link in the description.
Dragon Ball, Pokemon, Kaiju, and more. It's Steven's Toy Reviews.
Hey, Collector Steven here, and welcome to another Spider-Man related review. Today we have a review of the SH Figuarts Carnage from Venom, Let There Be Carnage. And I gotta be real with you here, folks. When Venom was announced and showed off, I was thinking, oh, you know what, Venom kind of looks okay. And then it was solicited, and then I got it in hand, and I was like, wow, Venom is really cool. And then they showed Carnage, and I was like, ooh, Carnage looks really good. And then it was solicited, and I was like, well, you know what, it's kind of pricey. There were some first in-hand picks, some folks had quality control, and then I got Carnage in hand, and I was like, well, you know what, Carnage is pretty good. It's about on par with Venom, and then I got to fooling around with it. So let's take a look to see why you should add Carnage into your collection, and why he's Figure of the Year material, my friend. Oh, get ready. Alright, so I did a really good job of selling Carnage to you pretty much right off the rip, because we're in the intro section where I already did the BBTS plug there, and we're at about 1 minute and 10 seconds. So I just got to keep this going because I recorded everything else and it was like 11 minutes. So we're in the deep here. So there are just going to be a couple of downsides to Carnage. One, notably being the symbiote parts, the little tentacle, tendril bits, whatever have you, that are going to be on like his thigh, his shin, his bicep, and so forth. Those little parts that you can tell that they're sort of glued in and not necessarily in the actual sculpt itself. I know some folks are going to be upset being able to see that. I'm not really bothered by it, but I've already seen a couple of people complain about it. Then we do have the exposed holes in the back for where the big tentacle or the tendril parts do plug in. However, considering the amazing accessories this guy comes with, I don't think those are going to be exposed for many people for a long time. Then I will note that the head sculpt, as some people have pointed out more so particularly in my unboxing video comments, not accurate 100%, but unfortunately, due to specific shots you may point out, you're not really going to unfortunately have accuracy when it comes to a CGI model unless you do have access to that model, and even then it can sometimes be difficult to recreate from on screen into physical properties sometimes. What I will fault on is going to be accuracy when it comes to the teeth compared to what was on screen. I think that the teeth aren't necessarily accurate, but when we take a look at the actual figure in and of itself, I think that the figure looks great. We have a lot of nice, finely sculpted details, such as the sinewy bits that we can clearly see on the head, more so extending past the teeth all the way up into that nice crooked smile that Carnage is known to have here, which, mwah, chef's kiss. We have some black spray that is around the eyes, which unfortunately there is a rather notorious picture that's been making the rounds to show that Carnage has poor quality control. Mine clearly does not have that. Does it look like the prototype? No, but I don't really think there's going to be any figure that looks like the prototype. But we do have the black veins that are found all throughout Carnage that go from the tip of the head all the way down to the toes. And then when we take a look at it under macro photography, we do actually have some red veins as well that are sculpted on. Very nice. Overall, I think Carnage is amazing to look at, and it's very clear where the money went to on this figure. The articulation. Yeah, Carnage is good. All right, so articulation-wise, we got Carnage in a neutral pose here because there's a lot to talk about. And oh boy, ooh, wow, it's all good. So basically, very similar to Venom, but a lot is good here. So similarly to Venom, we can look up and we can look down on a hinge system here. Let's go ahead and pop the head off just so you can see what's going on. The hinge is going to allow you to move forward and back, right? And that's not going to be a ball joint, that's going to be a peg. So when we do pop the head back on, do note, you're going to have just a little bit of a click there. You're not going to be able to rock at that point of articulation. You can swivel, however, but at the point where the neck plugs into the body, that is going to enable you to sort of rock and tilt a little bit, okay? So when you are turning from side to side, you got to keep that in mind. You need to move this joint, not here, because if you do, then it'll pop off. It may actually make a snapping sound, but I mean, whoop, it tends to do that. So with that in mind, Carnage can look up about that far, and because of the chin, can look down about that far. The alternate head sculpt, somewhat similar range of movement, not really worth showing you that much of a difference. We'll take a look at the tendril or tentacle, whatever you prefer, parts in just a little bit. Now, for the shoulders, we have butterfly hinges. I think these are just hinges. I try to move them for like ball joint purposes, like some of the Dragon Ball Figuarts, and it doesn't seem like we're quite there. They kind of feel like they're ratcheting a little bit if I move them up and down, but effectively we can get them to move in and out. No real up or down movement, which that's good. So Venom can move his arms, Carnage can move his arms out about that far, which is similar somewhat to Venom's because of the sculpt cutaway that's right here, but unfortunately there's a little bit of a lip there, so when you move the arm forward, you're going to get a little bit of a block, but the arms do plug into that hinge, that butterfly hinge, on a ball joint, so we can spin the arms around, like so. We can even move them back a little bit, and they do have a hinge joint right there for the shoulder sculpt, so Carnage can T-pose without an issue. So one of the things that I like to do to help get the arms to move forward a little bit more is to move the arm like that, utilize that butterfly hinge to its max capacity, tilt, and then utilize the shoulder hinge just a little bit like that, and you can get a little bit better movement than normal. So there you go. Little tight here, not as much over there. We have a dedicated bicep swivel, so we can spin the arm all the way around, like so, and double hinge elbows. You may remember in my Venom review, Venom had a portion of the sculpt like tucked into the elbow. Didn't have that here for Carnage, so yay. Wrists. We'll come back to that. So for the torso of Carnage here, apparently for Venom, there is actually a peg that enables just swivel movement, and then there is a hinge. You can hear squeaky. For the ab crunch and the waist on my Venom, which waist I know for sure is a ball joint, those joints were really tight. I'm assuming it's going to be the same here for Carnage. So there is not actually going to be a ball joint. It's actually going to be very similar here as it is here. So something to keep in mind. I'll take everyone's word for it. Okay. I mean, we get swivel and hinge forward like that, as you can see. Very good. But we can't like tilt. But it is what it is. But yes, ball joint very much so clearly at the waist, which is good. For the hips, we have swivel and hinge movement forward and back, just like so. We can kick like that, and then we can kick off to the side. Very, very good. Dedicated thigh swivels. Spin all the way around if you really need to. Double hinge knees. Very good. For the ankles, we have a swivel because it pegs into the lower portion of the leg. Hinge at the ankle, and then we have ankle rockers, and then the toes. All right, so the tendrils on the back. Okay, so this is awesome, and this also goes into the wrists. Let's go ahead and talk about accessories next. Actually, for articulation, Carnage is wonderful, thumbs up. Now, let's talk about accessories. So, Carnage is going to come with an alternate head sculpt, which is great. He's going to come with a total of 3 alternate hand parts and 3 interchangeable hand and tentacle tip parts, and 3 alternate tentacle tip parts. Cool. All right, so for the alternate head sculpt part, Carnage is going to come with a head sculpt where his tongue is lashing out. Folks sometimes don't like, in particular, this just as a concept. You know, Carnage lashing his tongue out. It's more so Venom's gig than Carnage, but nevertheless, Carnage is doing it because that's the movie. But hey, we got it here. Cool. Okay, alternate hands and tentacle tip parts. So Carnage is going to come with 4 sets of tentacles or tendrils or whatever you would prefer to call them, and they are all the same sculpt. You can do whatever you please with plugging them into his back. This is why I'm saving this, because this is what makes Carnage so damn cool, okay? We get 4. I'm going to talk about how you plug them in a second. All right, so for the interchangeable tip parts, we get 3, which by the instructions are intended to be used either as alternate hand parts or alternate tentacle tip parts. We get 2 blades, which you get to see thumbs there, so it's clear which one's meant to be left or right. And then we get another part, which now I'm looking at it. It's very clear. It has a giant middle finger. All right. Then we get an alternate part for the tentacle tip, which is a clear hook. We get one that this looks like the tip that he used to shoot the spikes at Venom in the final battle of the movie. And then we get a little like dinosaur plate spike thing for Carnage here. All right. So now that that is done, okay, so let's go ahead and refocus in here and snap back to video real quick. Okay, so the way that you plug it in, I'll go ahead and pop 2 of these out just for funsies, okay? So, here's the deal. Watch this. You saw me pop this end out. I don't care if it's left or right. Because guess what? Carnage is modular. That is the secret here for Carnage with the wrists and the tentacle tips. So even though the instructions say, I don't need you. We're good. We're done with the recording review. Even though this says interchangeable hand, you can do whatever you want with any of these. That's the secret to Carnage. That's what makes this a contender for Figure of the Year. You see a hand, if you want to, you can put it on his tentacle tip. If you see a weapon part, you can put it on his hand. Doesn't matter what the instructions say, because you can do whatever you want. You can just make stuff up. Carnage is basically a Build-A-Figure here, and you have all of the tools at your disposal. If you really want to get crazy, you can probably get multiple Figuarts Carnages, and you can pull the tentacle parts apart and you can connect them and you could create super mile-long tentacles and just make amazing displays. That's how wacky you can get with this thing, in theory. I don't think anyone's going to spend $1,000 to do all the modular things. I'm considering getting a second cartridge myself just to have some fun for the piss of it. But nevertheless, yes. So with that being said, here are the action shots. The world is your oyster with Carnage here. I hope you have fun. The only thing that Carnage is realistically missing is a support stand and a Cletus Cassidy head. But I'm sure the licensing rights for the actual actors would be a pain in the rear. And then maybe just like a symbiote puddle. That would be neat too. But nevertheless, if you need support stands or effect parts, you know I have videos to help you out. Size comparison time. This is where things get a little bit weird because it really does depend on the scene in the movie. So like for an example, when at the end of the movie, Carnage and Venom go head to head, Venom is like from the tips of their heads down to Venom's feet, he's like to Carnage's knees. Then at another point, like Venom is the size of Carnage's torso. So how big is Carnage? I'll leave that to your imagination. He's just a big boy. So buy now, skip, or buy now. I mean, I love this thing. It's already contender for Figure of the Year for me. I was very skeptical going into this, paying full price, and quite frankly, not only did it pay off, it's worth every penny. You saw that I have 2 domestic Carnage figures. My Amazing Yamaguchi is currently boxed up, and I think this one and that one pretty much go head-to-head for what is my favorite Carnage figure. It is going to be very difficult to dethrone this one. What else could they include? Just an option part, so this way we don't have the holes sticking out of the back of Carnage, would have been appreciated, but honestly, considering how awesome it is just to fiddle around with it, yeah, that would have been good. The only thing that I kind of skipped over just in my excitement is that the tentacle parts, they can be a little bit awkward with the posing and the joints just because of the fixed sculpt. This isn't SH Monster Arts, this is going to be Figuarts, and they haven't quite nailed that down yet, but nevertheless, it's an acceptable drawback. Carnage is awesome. You're not going to regret your purchase. Hey collectors, that's going to wrap up the video today, and as always, thanks for watching, commenting, sharing, subbing, it all helps. I always enjoy responding to comments, so be sure to drop one down below and I will respond if I can. I do have supporters on Patreon as well, and each review gets an end card to show who is supporting each month, so here are the end cards. Camera batteries, SD cards, even hard drives. It's not possible without that support, so thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Here's the final end card, so this way you can click subscribe, check out another video, or even check out the social media outlets. You know you want to. Before we end today, as in the description, there may be paid ad space, affiliate links, or product samples that were sent out in this video, so please check out the STR ad disclosure. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch ya in the next video.